7 o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. Call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome, everyone. Got a small crowd tonight. Football. Okay, we have no presentations and no public hearings, so we'll go to public comments, and members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. If you wish to come forward, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There's a time clock up to your left. Please state your name and address for the record. No profanity, no personal attacks. That being said, please come forward. Podium's open. I don't think anyone's going to move. All right. We'll move to consent agenda. Is there an item on consent agenda council would like to remove? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Deaton, second McNair. We approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Consent agenda passes. No planning and zoning consent, no committee recommendations, no old business. We'll move right to new business. New business item number 1, consider adopting a resolution regarding the governing body's intent to levy a property tax exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Mr. Wolf.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My presentation.
Matt was waiting for his walk-up.
How simple. On June 17th, 2024, the City Council expressed intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate of 16.825 mils. City staff is seeking direction on the proposed mill rate, which needs to be included on the proposed resolution. To help facilitate the discussion, I'm going to recap the mill levy scenarios presented during the last meeting. I also provide some additional information that was requested by the City Council. The new valuation estimate for the city has increased by 8.9%. Please note that the pending tax appeals could lower the estimated assessed value. Keeping a flat mill rate and capturing the valuation increase would increase property taxes on the average Gardner single-family home by $3.51 a month. For the purpose of this analysis, we assume the average Gardner home to be appraised at $325,000. Revenue neutral rate would decrease the mill rate by 1.494 mils. A mill is worth approximately $344,000. The revenue neutral rate would limit property taxes to the same dollar amount as the prior year. It would also lower allocations of motor vehicle tax and county sales tax in future budgets. The flat mill levy scenario would keep an 18.319 mils. And when we looked at the scenario, the general fund balance was basically in line with our target. We have a target fund balance of 30% of expenditures. By the end of 2025, we're projected to spend down to 34%. And then at the end of the 5-year forecast in 2029, the fund balance ends at 25%. In our other tax levy fund, the bond and interest fund, we would have a fiscal capacity of about 10.5 million. And what I mean by that is next year we could issue 10.5 million in principal amount 10-year GEO bonds and support the debt service from the bond and interest fund. Under the revenue neutral rate scenario, if we reduce bond and interest mill levy to account for the revenue neutral rate, our fiscal capacity would drop down to 6 million. If we reduce bond and interest by a quarter mil, we would still retain bond and interest fiscal capacity of about 10 million. If we reduce by half a mil, the bond and interest fiscal capacity would drop down to 9 million. Kind of standing direction from the governing body was to maintain at least 10 million in bond and interest capacity. And the purpose of this was so we could invest in infrastructure to support development and to leverage grant and private funding opportunities. Some of the potential infrastructure projects that have been discussed in the past, which are currently not in CIP, that would be using this kind of fiscal capacity reserve and bond and interest, include 175th Street and South Clare Road, improvements to North Clare Road, improvements to US 56 interchange, New Trails Parkway extension, Moonlight Crossing or interchange, Gardner Road South, Destination Downtown, and an arterial pavement management program. The projects listed on the slide are not prioritized. The projects will be driven mostly by development interest and opportunities to leverage outside funding. The estimated local match for these major road projects or interchange improvements is around 4 to 6 million. It could be more depending on the level of funding available. Depending on how we structure debt and how much funding capacity we can obtain from outside sources, we can likely only have the capacity to do 2 or 3 of these projects in the near future. A new scenario is based on one of the council requests in the last meeting, where what would it look like if we adjusted our mill levy to keep that, to reduce our fund balance to 30% right away, and then kind of keep it around that target range. That would involve basically a 2 mil decrease in 2025. We'd have to turn around and increase the mill rate by 2 mils in 2026. Then later on in 2028, increase another mill. The scenario would likely increase risk to our credit rating, and it would affect future county sales tax and motor vehicle tax allocations. Generally, credit rating agencies want to see kind of stable tax policies and financial plans. Having large swings in mill rates up and down, it probably wouldn't seem very stable. One of the concerns is the financial plan assumes future city councils will increase the mill rates multiple times in the future. And every year there's a lot of state legislation that's being talked about that may hinder or restrict your ability to do that in the future. Another scenario is what would happen if we lowered $500,000 in the general fund in 2025 and try to hold on to that decreased mill levy for as long as possible until we hit a certain threshold, say 25% of fund balance, and then we stair-stepped up the mill levy at a later date. What this scenario does is it would lower the 2025 projection down to 33% at the end of the year. And then at the end of the 5-year forecast, the fund balance would drop down to 21%. And to accommodate back up to 25%, we'd have to increase the mill rate by 1 3/4 mil in 2029 in order to reach that 25% fund balance. Tonight, we are seeking direction from the City Council on what mill levy they'd like to include on the proposed resolution, stating the city's intent to exceed the revenue neutral rate.
Thank you, Matt. Is there any public comment on new business item number 1? Council.
All right, that's the sound of the can of worms being opened here. I've been advocating for that $500,000 decrease. There's some obvious reasons why. I think I made those clear in my last comments at the last meeting. I understand the projections are conservative, admittedly. We are running into an economic slowdown. I'm assuming that those have also been factored into these calculations.
They have been.
Correct. So the question, I've got a little bit of a question about the out years, 2028, 2029 specifically, as to whether or not we would expect to see that lower rate of growth on those out years. But again, we can't count on growth, growing our way out of a potential issue with fund balance. But my thinking here is, as council president, I used to be council vice president. When I was mayor, we talked about how we need to be good stewards of the city's money and of the taxpayers' money. Actually, it's the taxpayers' money, not the city's money. And I think that if we have the ability to drop mills, we're not going to revenue neutral. That's a pipe dream. We talked about that too. We're a growing city, but we will be growing, and the growth is accelerating. Even in the midst of this economic slowdown, I think we need to stick to a half-mil reduction. Unless someone gives me a compelling reason not to do that. And that still keeps us at the 10 million bond and interest. I know we spend down our reserves a little bit more, but I think we still need to look at that half-mil reduction.
Steve. Half mil to keep us at 10, right?
The half mil brought it to 9, quarter
Brought
brought
it
it
to
to 10.
9. Quarter brought it to 10.
But we're saying, again, one forecast that I saw last time we met, kept the fund balance as basically the same across all three scenarios, okay? But the bond and interest was the variable.
Right, it's on your screen now.
Okay.
So the quarter mil reduction keeps it at 10 million.
Correct.
The half mil reduction keeps it at 9.
But that's only if the 2029 projection stays at 25%. You know what I'm saying? They're saying if we want to keep that $10 million bond and interest capability, our bond and interest fund is going to drop to 21%. Okay? Because those two are movable this way. So if we go back to the projection for the half-mil reduction,
There's the two pieces, general.
yes,
fund
there
and
is.
interest.
Yes, there is.
I'm pretty sure Matt's slides are, the projection is for the general fund.
General fund, correct. And that would
Correct.
lower bond
Yes.
and interest. If we take bond and interest mil reduction, then we end up lowering the fiscal capacity.
Right. Right.
Okay.
There's two.
That's what I'm saying.
elements that move.
It's a floating, scenario here. So if we take the general fund mill reduction, we're going to lower our bonding capacity. We're going to keep our bonding capacity at 10 million. We're going to lower our general fund balance down to 21%.
So you're saying you're taking it from the.
So are we going to go to a
General
general
fund
fund balance of 21%? Or are you going to go with a bond and interest fiscal capacity of 9 million? You can't have both, because then we're talking about even a greater mill levy reduction. I'm only looking for for a half mil, period.
Out of B and I.
Out of either one. Either one, it doesn't matter, because they're both coming out of the same bonding jurisdiction.
Okay, so let me start off with one
Mhm.
little caveat here. Regardless of what we talk about tonight, we've got 2+ months to discuss this ultimately. So unless anybody is ready to say, I want to raise mills, I feel like we could tell staff, put it at 0, and then we will adjust and figure out so we can lower it anytime before September.
Nope,
But they can start-
the resolution that's being filed with the state must have a mill levy
And
associated.
we can
But
go
it's-
lower than it at any time.
Okay.
But then we can continue this conversation, but we're done with, Matt can run off and file the paperwork.
Correct,
right?
Matt?
Yes.
Okay, so that's my first thing, regardless of where we get tonight, okay?
Mhm.
The rest of it becomes, and the one interesting additional scenario that Matt threw up there was because I asked that question,
Mhm.
what happens, right? And we have to look at this, right, in multifacets, right? Bond and interest, general fund, short-term, long-term,
Mhm.
right? So I don't think anybody is going to want to do 1.75 mils in 5 years, right? Nobody wants to raise that. That's if we go by lowering the general fund by $0.5 mil now, right? So you were saying we could do $0.5 mil either place. I don't feel like it's an option in the general fund. I don't know about everybody else. Now, if you do the B and I, okay, it's probably still on the table, but you did lose your bonding capacity, or fiscal capacity, and we need that to do any of those new projects.
What if we took a quarter off of each?
We could do that. Matt, do you have those numbers? I mean, it's probably somewhere in the middle.
It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, okay.
If we took a quarter mil off of each, then you might not have that issue. We still keep our 10 million in bonding capacity
You could do 10 in bonding, and you do what?
somewhere around
23 to
25.
24% maybe in bond and interest in 29. I mean, in general fund, give or take.
I'd have to read the numbers, but that sounds about right.
I mean, that puts us real close to targets, and if our growth is any better than we expect in 2028, 2029, then
Well, when you did these projections, what did you use for any sort of assumptions for evaluation?
5% a year.
Okay. And what we saw last year was 8, almost
Yeah.
9%.
yeah, 9.9.
And I don't know that we would continue to expect that as 5% fairly average over the past, I don't know, however many years.
It is, but it's on average perhaps, but like you'll have like 10% one year, and then you'll have 2% the next year,
Yeah.
so it
Yeah.
can vary quite a bit. And we have been seeing it slow down over time.
Yeah, I would say probably over the last couple of years, we saw a huge spike, and then now it's maybe slowed down a little bit.
I think the issue that you run into is that the issue is not necessarily the property tax revenues necessarily is going to be the issue. It's really more around sales tax. We have more than most Johnson County municipalities, we rely on sales tax to fill that gap in the general fund. That's,
Came up short.
and we have come up short. And that's typically the canary in the coal mine for economic slowdown. So that's also not taking into consideration the fact that we've got a lot more commercial that's going to be opening up in the next year and a half here. So we will get more receipts for sales tax from more commercial development. But, you know, that's the other piece that we have to keep in mind.
I want to weigh in here. So
Mhm.
a lot more commercial coming online if we have the capacity to develop the roads and infrastructure. Can't have both. So if the council policy is a 30% fund balance and 10 million we're going well below that threshold in either one or the other. So we're 10 million now. So if we go to a half mil, we're going down to 9 million. And that's not even considering the opportunities we're having on 183rd Street, on 191st Street on the other side. And we don't even have, now we're gonna have to pick and choose and scale back. So part of the discussion has to be the message to me and staff. Do you want us to continue to be aggressive to bring in development and growth, or do you want us to slow down? And the message shouldn't have to be verbal. If we're gonna cut our bonding capacity, or our debt capacity, I mean, we're gonna have to slow down and look at some of these things in the context of we cannot afford it. So it's not just one or the other. You have to consider what the repercussions of doing that are. Because we have things that I mean, frankly, that the governing body doesn't know about, that's in the pipeline, that we can't discuss yet, that the 10 million is, it's gonna go quickly if some of these projects pop. Because 10 million is not a lot to do road projects, it's not a lot to do, you know, wastewater and some of the things that we may have to get out in front of. Now, eventually, they could pay for themselves, but especially when you're talking about 2,600 acres of undeveloped land, that's not gonna develop, you know, neatly all the way down. I mean, we're gonna have to jump up a little bit or jump ahead a little bit in some places to facilitate the growth so that it's a catalyst for other growth. But it's not gonna develop parcel to parcel, north to south or south to north. So you have to take those things into consideration when you're having these discussions.
So, as Steve alluded to, I'm the first one to jump up and say, let's lower mills. My concern is, we're the fastest growing city in the state.
Close to it.
The only way to take care of our current needs is to continue growing. Right? Like I said, Ponzi scheme. we're not to the point that we're stuck physically with our growth, right? One
Oh,
day
no.
that we will be there, that will be a very hard conversation. Until then, I feel like we have to capitalize on that growth. So I do not want to reduce bonding interest, because the only way to take care of $30 million in wastewater treatment plants, and the fact that if we ever add an arterial road program, that's 5 to 7 mils that we don't even have considered, right? I feel like if we did anything, the most would be a quarter. Because I also am, while I like going down, I would love for us to go down more, but the problem is I do not want to see where we have to jump it up in 5 years. And it's a balancing act, right? I don't want to leave too much on the table today because one day it looks bad. Yeah, okay. But at the same time, I don't want to drop too much now and then have to hit everybody hard in 5 years and go, hey, by the way, you know how it's been a little bit of a recession now, and whatever's been going on in life and whoever's president and so on, hey, here's another mill. Hope you enjoyed that quarter mill, 3 years ago, right? So I'm just trying to be careful of that. So I would say probably flat or a quarter.
We kept it flat last year, and pardon my throat clearing here. We kept it flat last year. We understand why. Our overall expenses internally for the biggest component of our budget, which is staff, significantly increased. And so we were kind of locked in. We had no choice. We really didn't have a choice to lower mills. We also recognize, I think we all recognize, that right now our citizens are really suffering. I mean, it's becoming hard to live in Johnson County, and for the folks in Gardner who have a lower income per capita than the rest of the county, it's a little bit harder, quite a bit harder. I would still at least want a quarter, and if we don't want to touch our BNI, then we're looking at a quarter mil reduction in the general fund balance, or general fund mill rate. I'm willing to live with that. If we need the BNI, then I'm fine with that. But we've got to give something back. We've got to.
But to Mark's point, if we tell Matt flat rate tonight, we still have the ability to lower it.
That's fine.
And
That's
get
fine.
to see those numbers.
We've got time for discussion.
I completely get that. I understand that, but I think that we need to have a really serious discussion
No, I'm fine
as
with
to
continuing that too.
as to how much more we're going to burden the taxpayers in Johnson County, and Gardner. And I mean, remember, we're not the only ones that are having these discussions. The school district and the county and everybody else is going to have these same discussions. But
Besides you and I, where's the rest of you sitting?
I'm with, for tonight, let's leave it
flat for tonight.
flat for tonight.
and that's fine. We're not making a decision on that.
I also mean, where do you have any inclination where we might go? I'm not saying you're not locked in. No holding your feet to the fire here.
I think the most we could go down is a quarter.
That's where I'm at as well. So a quarter.
I don't feel comfortable with anything over a quarter, and I know I'd like to have some more conversations with just how our city's expenses are. I mean, every time we come in here,
It went up.
this bill got,
20%,
higher. This bill went up,
30%.
and so yes, our citizens are seeing it, but we are seeing it too. So we either have to stop offering services that are going up, or we have to keep a general fund to pay for those services. And
I understand that.
That's a difficult decision to make.
That's why
Well,
we're in
there's
these-
really only, I'm kind of new to this, so I'm just listening a lot. But it sounds like we either got to raise revenue or lower expenses. By leaving a mill levy where it's at, over the short haul, yes, it's everybody has to bite the bullet a little bit. But if we go looking at reducing the mill levy, tax burden on the citizens, I think we need to take a real hard look at really cutting expenses, in what we're spending.
That's true, but I think we've come to that point. I mean, Jim, how much did you
I mean, just like families in our community, we're gonna have to really take a hard look at what we're spending here too. And try to get the best bang for the buck that we can get.
That's the equivalent of 4 mils, right? A little more than 4 mils.
Well, I
Yeah.
think there's a general consensus to, at least for now, leave it flat,
Yeah.
okay? And then we can have further discussion, but our, going forward from tonight, we'll start with that, and then we can, if we decide to lower, we can, correct?
Correct. Please note that it will be probably published now with a flat mill rate, so when we have public hearings and stuff like that, it will indicate that you're proposing a flat mill rate, but you always have the chance to roll it. You can roll back some more mills if you needed to.
And then that's great though, if we put it at flat and we have a public hearing and a ton of people show up asking for that quarter or half or whatever, we can have that discussion, and if people don't express anything, then we're back here in the same place.
Well, and, you know, one day, Matt, I'm not saying right this minute, we may wanna look at, this is to your point, Jim, a list of the must and the nicety expenses, right? The vast majority of our expenses are musts, right? But we do have a few niceties. And people don't wanna talk about, you know, eliminating them, but if you see it on the paper, might put things in perspective at some point. You know, hey, do you want a road, or do you want to continue to have that pool for 1.2 to 1.5 mils a year? Right. So, not saying get rid of the pool today. I mean, I threatened to drain it before.
Jason's not even
That
here.
was the
to-
lake. That was
Jason's
the
not
lake.
even here to defend himself.
I
It's like,
would drain the pool too, but you know, at a certain point, if push comes to shove, those are the type of conversations you start having. So.
And I'll just throw out this example, we just were notified that our animal control bill, not the animal control, but animal shelter went up 50% for the next year. And now we're gonna get charged on top of that for services that were included in the previous contract. So from 115 to 170, and what was included in the 115, there's additional fees on top of that that will take us up closer to 190 to 200 from 115. So that's services, and we've been talking about animal control services for years.
Yep.
Because there's no alternatives. I mean, all the other cities are dealing with the same thing. Everybody's at capacity. Nobody wants to. There's jurisdictions talked about getting out of animal control, which would be probably not a great thing to do. I mean, we board like 300 dogs a year, so it's just things like that that are beyond our control. Where I mean, that's the thing we're facing.
and maybe that's something we need to take to the citizens and say, hey, this expense has gone up by 70%. This expense has gone up by double. You know, what do you want us to keep and what do you want us to toss?
I mean, to some degree, but I think that's also
Yeah.
what we're here for, you know, to.
Oh, I know. But I think that that's something that if we want to make that justification, understand this is their money, not the city's money, and we've got to treat it like that.
I'd love to see a packed house at the next budget.
Yes.
And hearing people's feedback about the services. that we
Please come out.
If we made that list, whatever it was,
Mhm.
right, we haven't done a survey in a while. Could always throw it out there.
I don't know if we have the time to do that in the next month.
Well, it didn't have to be in the next month. I mean, I think we can come up with a solution for this year. But,
Yeah.
you know, we're gonna have to make hard decisions sooner than later. And getting that feedback, as long as it comes to us at some point in the near future.
I think one of the other things that we need to be aware of, consider, is I've been hearing a lot of mandates coming down from the state, federal government, as far as you will spend on this, you will spend on that. And we have no vision, but a lot of those coming at us, along with 50% increases or whatever. You're right, Mark, we're gonna have to have some hard conversations in the next few months.
Okay, great. Matt, do you have direction?
Yeah.
I do, thank you.
We need to then.
We have to vote on the
officially make this
resolution.
official.
Yeah.
All right, so. Do I have a motion then for, who does this one?
Second.
Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We adopt resolution number 2144, a resolution of the City of Gardner, Kansas, regarding the governing body's intent to levy a property tax exceeding the revenue neutral rate with a proposed mill levy of,
Mayor.
what's the,
It's 18.
what was that again, I'm sorry? 18.319 mils. City Clerk.
Councilmember McNair.
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Shute.
Yes.
Councilmember Ween.
Yes.
Resolution number 2144 passes. Thank you, everyone. We can continue to have good discussion on this in the next few weeks. New business item number 2, consider authorizing the city administrator to execute an amendment to the professional services contract for George Butler Associates, Inc., GBA, for the design and environmental clearance of the Cedar Niles Lift Station Improvements Project, project number WW8013. Mr. Meyer.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. We're here to discuss the Cedar Niles Lift Station Improvements Project, and more importantly, majority of what this is for environmental clearance and some addition to the design contract with GBA, and then a subcontract with Black & Veatch to help with the HUD requirements on the federal allocation of $3.8 million to this project. Project overview here. To the northeast of this, on this picture, you have the gravity line that comes down the south and follows the drainage pattern to the pink box, which is the lift station being proposed, and then the force main that goes all the way to the west to the south lift station and connection into our existing sanitary sewer system. So the scope amendment covers a lot of the HUD environmental process, the NEPA coordination and documentation, biological and natural resources, cultural resources, air quality, noise, hazardous materials, environmental justice, and socioeconomic of the area for this system to go in, and how it's going to affect development in the future in this area. Potentially, there is a large effort of work that we are foreseeing with the Osage Nation on the cultural resources portion of this environmental clearance. They have been getting more active, and they've hired more people on their staff to do environmental clearances in our area. And this can vary from just a little bit of environmental clearance paperwork to a full archaeologist study. That's why there's this contract in place where it's based off of hours and not just a lump sum contract. So whatever we do not need as part of this additional scope of work, we just won't be paying the consultants for those dollar amounts. In addition, we've also added a third bid package to try and help speed up the construction of this process. We originally had two packages. One would be for the lines and one would be for the lift station, but we thought it would be good to include a third package to see how our construction environment is once we get to the bidding process. If it would be easier for one person to work on the force main, one person to work on the gravity, one person to work on the lift station. And that would help speed up the process of construction, which is a goal for development in the area. Another aspect of the HUD that is new to majority of us is development aggregation. And this does not just include our project. It appears working with planning and the city administrator's office, that we're projected to have initially approximately 105 acres of new development within about the first 5 years of this project being installed. And HUD looks at it and gave us the rule of thumb of 5 years, but they kind of left it vague and said, well, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years worth of development. So we need to put together numbers on what those projections are, and we'll be working with some different departments to help us on that aspect of it. But as well, we need our consultants to help us piece that together with their expertise. As well, the design consultants have experience with the HUD Heroes software, which is where everything gets electronically submitted for these funds instead of mail-in. So the design consultants have multiple projects of experience versus city staff that are brand new to this process. So they'll help us go through that process and make sure that we have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted. And hopefully that will make this just a little bit quicker process with the consultants on board.
I think, Jeff,
Any questions?
any questions from public? No? Okay. Council?
Talk about bureaucracy.
This is all being required because of the HUD grant portion of this, so. It's what we gotta do, so that kind of makes the decision for us.
Well, no further questions.
So moved.
Second.
Motion deed and second shoot. We authorize the city administrator to execute amendment number 2 to the professional services contract with George Butler Associates, Inc., GBA, in an amount not to exceed $268,375 for the environmental clearance for the Cedar Niles Lift Station Improvements Project, WW8013. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? New business item number 2 passes. Thank you, Jeff. And finally, new business item number 3, consider a resolution designating the legal record as the official city newspaper for the city of Gardner, Kansas.
KSA 121651 states the governing body must designate by resolution a newspaper to be the official city newspaper. On Thursday of last week, we were notified that the Gardner News was going out of business, so we have to designate a new paper of record. We had looked at the possibility of using our own website. We've had that discussion before, and we talked about that. Wichita just did it 2 weeks ago. But we would have to have a charter ordinance change. We'd have to have a 60-day protest period. And then there's some concerns from both Tyler and Ryan about it wouldn't be all inclusive. We couldn't do everything on the website, so we'd still have to publish some stuff in the paper of record. So we're going to look at that and come back to council with a recommendation on that. But for now, the legal record, we've used them in the past, and that went well. So recommend adopting resolution 2145, designating the legal record as the official newspaper of the city of Gardner, Kansas.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any public comment? Council? Any questions? I mean, it's pretty easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Housekeeping, you just switch over.
Yep.
It's very inexpensive. All right, is there a motion for new business item 3? Motion Deaton, second Baldwin. We adopt resolution 2145, a resolution of the city of Gardner, Kansas, designating the legal record as the official newspaper for the city of Gardner, Kansas. City Clerk?
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Deaton.
Yes.
Councilmember Ween.
Yes.
Councilmember Shute.
Yes.
Councilmember McNair.
Yes.
Resolution 2145 passes. All right, that does it for the agenda. We'll go to council updates. Start Chief Waldeck.
We hosted our first ever award ceremony last week. I know some of the invitations did not get delivered in a timely manner due to the mail and some other things, so I apologize for that. Next time we'll follow up with emails. But it went very nice. I think the officers appreciated it, and it was very nice to hear all of the great things that the officers do. We had, I believe, 17 officers received awards and were recognized, and we had a packed house, so it was great. We had a real busy weekend this past weekend, but not too many fireworks complaints. So that seems to be going well.
Thank you. City clerk?
I have nothing.
Finance?
Yes, the fiscal stewards, our fiscal services division, and also our communication manager partnered to create the popular annual financial report. It's the first one we've created. It's basically a summarized report on our financial condition that takes information from our larger document, the annual comprehensive financial report. But it's basically a kind of new outreach to help increase financial transparency, make it easier to understand and digest. So I highly recommend you take a look at it. Let me know how you like it. Thanks.
Pardon my ignorance, but is that the official, is it just calling it popular or is it technically
It's
call
a-
it popular?
It's a GFOA program, and that's what they call it.
I don't know if it was just everyone loved it or. Very good. Thank you, Matt. City attorney?
Nothing from me.
Utilities, Cons.
Yeah, last Friday, we got a phone call from Evergy. They were requesting to do maintenance on a coupling capacitor voltage transformer, better known as a CCVT. The CCVT are used for relay protection. So we told them, yeah, you can work on the device. However, they opened the breaker that was feeding substation 1. So the customers east of Moonlight were dropped. So we had our operators backfeed the circuit so we can restore the customers. So we are having a meeting with them to make sure next time they do any switching, we are involved and we know exactly what they're planning to do. It was a 15-minute outage, but it was, in my opinion, Evergy's error. That's all I have.
Thank you, Guns. Dave?
Nothing tonight.
Kellum?
Also nothing tonight.
City Administrator?
So since our last meeting, we've had a few more hiccups with the health insurance implementation. Today's the first day of actually it being in effect, so we'll get more information as we go along. But we are having our first large group meeting next Thursday, so we're going to start evaluating. Gravy will evaluate our consultant as well and find out where some of these problems occurred, whether it was lack of communication, lack of preparation. But we'll be coming back and trying to improve the process. We have about 3 or 4 months before we dive back into it. So we'll be ready to make changes if they need to be changed by December.
Thank you. Councilman McNair?
Nothing.
Councilman Wayne?
Happy Independence Day, and thank you for the invite. It was a great event. Happy to see everybody's, all of our officers' families, and to see just how, how much they do for our community that maybe goes unheralded. So it was a great event.
Councilman Chu?
Yeah, I'll kind of piggyback on this. Sorry, I missed the event. Didn't have information about it until like the day of, so my apologies for that. But I do absolutely, echo Councilmember Ween's sentiments around we have some of the best folks serving in our force of anybody in the metro, and they're super people, not just good cops, but they're super people as well. A couple of things real quick. I'm saddened that we had to make the decision today to change our paper of record. The Gardner News has been in business for well over 100 years. And it's really, really unfortunate that Cherry Road Media, who runs the news since it was sold upon Rhonda Humble's death, made the decision that Gardner is not a viable community for a newspaper. we're a city of 25,000. I think that there is viability for a paper. But that's an opinion, and opinions don't pay the bills, unfortunately. And I think that's where it came down to, is that the subscriptions and the advertisers weren't there to sustain the paper. I'm going to miss having Lynn Hermanson in this room, faithfully chronicling our meetings. She's a top-notch reporter. I feel terrible that she's had to go through the situation she had to during the last several months when she was the only staffer working for the paper, pretty much. It's a sad day for Gardner, and I wanted to acknowledge that, and I hope that we can continue to have a news source within the community that will hold everyone to account. Our school district, our city, everyone, because that's an important check on the powers of the elected officials in this town. So I'm hoping that someone will stand up and continue to take that mantle at some point. That's all.
Steve? Council Vice President?
I'll echo what Councilmember Ween said with the awards. It was really nice ceremony, and I think what I enjoyed the most is watching the families see their loved ones get the award. And I'm sure they come home with stories of what they are allowed to say, but hearing it in a room like that and understanding what your spouse did in certain events is probably, I'm sure, very meaningful to them. It was very eye-opening to me, some of the events that have happened, so I really appreciate that you put that on. Blazing Trails Martial Arts, they put on a free women's self-defense class last week that I participated in, and they plan on doing more, and I really appreciate that business for putting on a community event, as they're a new business here, and so go check them out. And also, happy Independence Day. Be safe and follow the fireworks rules, please.
Yes.
Council President?
I think it's great that we had the awards ceremony for the police department. I usually don't piggyback after somebody says it 3 times, but that one deserves it. So I think it's great that they got the recognition that they usually don't get.
Yep.
I also want to thank council for saying Independence Day.
Condition.
You have no idea how
I
many
think of
times
you
I have
every
been.
time.
You've
On
drilled
video.
you've drilled that into our
I-
heads a few times.
I did think about it. I said
I literally, my 6-year-old, literally, he saw it written Happy 4th of July somewhere, and he went up to him and said, it's not that right. So I do appreciate that. Everybody enjoy their holiday, and keep your fingers, and
Toes.
we'll enjoy the celebration on Thursday. Thank you.
Yes, so speaking of that, come out Independence Day, Thursday, Celebration Park. In addition to an exciting welcome from the mayor of Gardner, Kansas, you get to see Big Time Grain Company, George Burge, and Morgan Evans. It should be fun.
Do we know if
Great
it's
fire.
rain or shine? No, I mean, like, are we?
It's going to be
Only
rain or
putting it on
shine.
if there's
It
rain.
always is.
Good.
Yeah.
Is there a cancellation, rain?
Well, I talked to Jason about that. They can't set up some of the equipment and stuff if it's, heavy rain. So,
Okay. Just have to play it
just
in.
depends. I mean, if it was like it was this morning, that's
Yeah.
not gonna fly. So.
Okay.
I like drones.
I do have one
Tony.
kind of quick question, and it's slightly different than I had actually spoken to you before, but I've had some correspondence about people, homeless, maybe sleeping in
Yep.
the parks along the Greenway.
Yep.
And I wasn't exactly sure what our policy is. Are they allowed to? Is it what is the policy on that? If you could clarify.
Just to clarify, so you've received complaints about people sleeping on the Greenway?
I would say concern. I don't know if it was a complaint. They said, well, they don't appear to be doing anything, but we're concerned.
I
there's
will
someone
say
sleeping
I
out there.
saw an individual on Sunday morning on one of our benches,
Yeah.
or one of the benches on the Greenway on the south side of Madison. I didn't talk to the mayor about it.
So we've discussed this recently because there are some meetings going on with emergency management, and there was a poll taken earlier in the spring throughout
think there's a dawn to dusk restriction on those parks, right? I mean, so.
Yes, I believe the park.
Yeah.
So if someone maybe backs up to the park or the greenway, and that person, they notice someone sleeping at a bench behind their house,
They should call.
just call
Yes.
the
Yeah.
911 number or the,
The non-emergency or the 911 number is
they'll
fine.
direct them to the right
Okay.
place.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
It-
I will put an occasional watch. Can you tell me where it was?
I would,
It's on the Greenway. I don't know if it was north or south of.
Towards toward Madison. So
Yeah.
towards the-
Yeah,
Okay.
the individual I saw was, yeah, certainly south of Madison, right past the lighted intersection.
Mhm.
There's one bench just south of there, right before you hit the main entrance, before you hit the park. Jason, I don't ever remember the name of that park that's down there. That's kind of hidden in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's not Wingate, it's the other one.
I'm going to mention really quickly that I actually had had discussions earlier back in 2020, 2021 with folks in the homeless advocacy community, and there are quite a few homeless people down here, or unhoused, I guess is the way to really talk to them. A lot of them lost their homes because they lost their job or whatever, but most of them are sleeping in their cars. There are a few that slept in their cars down towards downtown over here. They found a parking space and just sleep. Also, you'll find one or two of them in the Walmart area, sleeping. But that's how our homeless, our unhoused, are usually in the community. They're in their cars. They're not really out in the open or in tents. But I would definitely advocate if folks are having an issue, they're struggling to stay. Obviously, we have assistance programs in our community here for that. But living in your car, especially if it's winter and you're running your heater, and you could have some serious issues with health doing that. So.
And we can connect them with resources.
Yeah.
So if we're notified, we can connect them with Johnson County Mental Health.
Absolutely.
And different resources.
Like, yep,
That does help.
multi-service center and places like that. Yeah, but I just wanted to make that clear. There are folks in this town that are suffering like that, having issues with trying to get a home. So.
All right, that's all I have. So unless there's nothing further, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Motion McNair, second Deaton. We adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? We're in adjournment. Thank you, everyone.